Okay, hello all you crazy people out there, this is DragoniteSpam, and welcome back to another one of these Game Maker videos. So, I kind of say this every week, but this is an idea that I've had to make a video about for a while now, and I just haven't bothered to get around to it. And that is going to be drawing on the screen with the mouse cursor, or whatever input tool you happen to be using. Like this, like Microsoft Paint style, using surfaces. So I'm going to close out of that example right there for a moment, and I'm going to come over here. And first, I suppose I should explain, surfaces are one of the more obscure functions in Game Maker. They let you draw something once and then use that one drawing over and over again as many times as you want. That may sound a little bit weird, but just imagine that you have, say, some graphic or something that doesn't change much, like the background frame of the pause menu or something like that. I'll throw an example up on the screen so that you can see what I mean. If you have something that requires a lot of draw code but doesn't change very much over time, what you can do is you can just draw it once, put it on a surface, and then just draw the surface with just one line of code every time. It saves typing, it saves processing speed, and you can do a few fun things with it, like I'm going to go create an object here, and I'm going to call it, for lack of better things to call it paint, and you can do a few fun things with it, like letting the user draw on the screen, which tends to be the more fun example, so that's what I'm going to go do here. So I'm going to say the create event surface equals surface create. It's going to take two arguments, width and height. The width is going to be the width of the room, and the height is going to be the height of the room. Over in the draw event, I'm going to draw one line of code. I'm going to draw one thing, and that's going to be draw surface at position. The ID is going to be the one that I created in the create event. The position is going to be 0 and 0. And I'm going to go and dump one of these paint objects in the room. Doesn't really matter where. Get out of there, run the game, nothing is going to happen. I hope it doesn't anyway. Okay, good, nothing happened. And now we're going to start programming this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the global left button event. So that is going to be under mouse, at the bottom, global left button. I don't think I've talked about this in any previous videos. It's not unlike just a regular mouse left button, except that instead of only triggering when you're clicking on the sprite, in this case the object doesn't have a sprite, it'll trigger anytime in the game that the left mouse button is pressed down, whether or not you're clicking on the object, which is what we want right now since this particular object doesn't really have anything to click on. So I'm going to say first surface set target, and if I can spell today that would be nice. I'm going to set it to surface. Did I spell that right? S-U-R-F-A-C. Okay, so I spelled that right. I'm going to make a little bit of space. Say surface reset target. I really can't spell today, can I? And that takes no arguments. And between here and here, any draw code that happens is going to be drawn on the surface instead of on the screen. Now, some of you may also be noticing that this is happening in global left button event instead of the regular old draw event where your draw code usually goes. And funnily enough, when you're drawing to surfaces, you can't put it in the draw event because nothing's going to happen at best and at worst. I've never seen this happen personally, but I've heard that some things can get seriously screwed up in your graphics, so don't draw to surfaces during the draw event. Use it in the create or mouse button or whatever event. Anyway, that's neither here nor there, so I'm going to say first draw set color C underscore black. I really can't type today, can I? My fingers are kind of sore. I just got up, and I don't know, I was like sleeping on my fingers kind of funny or something like that. They're kind of sore right now. Next, I'm going to say draw circle at mouse X and mouse Y, and how about a radius of like 4 and outline only false. So for now that's good. I'm going to save the game, I'm going to run it, and it's going to compile, and now I'm going to click and it's drawing some circles every time I put the mouse down. And you may be noticing that this happens whenever I'm like clicking, and not during the draw event in every frame of the game. And it's still being persistent because the surfaces are not reset between frames of the game, which is what we want right now. But if I minimize that, I didn't minimize that, I X'd out of it. That's not what I wanted to do. You may be noticing that this isn't very connected, and that's because your mouse is moving more than 1 pixel away from its previous location in every frame of the game. And to deal with that, there's a few things you can do. Well, there's a few things you can try. There's only one real thing you can do as far as I know. One, you can try increasing the room speed, and that is going to shorten the time between when the game checks where the mouse is and you can see now the little dots are closer together, but they're still not perfect. And you can make this as high as you want. I'm gonna make this like 600. I don't even know if it can go that high, and that may help a little bit, yeah, but it's still not gonna solve the problem. So I'm gonna go back down to a 30. I guess 60 is pretty standard for video games these days, but I'm gonna make it 30 just for simplicity. That's what I'm used to. The other thing that you can do, this is the one that I did my example over here on the other screen. But the other thing you can do, I'm going to make two little variables. I'm going to call them mouse. No, I'm going to call them not mouse. Mx equals 0 and my equals 0. And let's see, in the step event, if I can find my object over here, I'm going to go into the step event, and I'm going to say mx equals mouse x and my equals mouse y. And these variables are just going to store the previous locations of the mouse cursor. And now I'm going to comment out this draw circle here. Instead of saying draw circle, I'm going to say draw line from mouse x. I told you I can't type today. Mouse y to mx and my. And that's just going to be connecting the mouse's previous locations with its current location, and it's going to draw a line between them. So you're going to see a nice continuous strip instead of just a bunch of random dots. So see, I'm just clicking randomly, drawing some lines, and it's continuous. Now, if you want to give this a little bit of width, if you want to give this these lines a little bit of width, you can say instead of draw a line, you can say draw line width, and that's going to take an extra argument. That's going to be the width of the line. We're going to make that 4, and that'll give it a little bit more weight, make it a little thicker, make it look a little, I don't know, more useful, I guess. And there you go. It's the same thing, just a little thicker. If you were to make the width really big, you would start to notice, I'm going to make this like about 10 or something like that. If you were to make this really big, you would start to notice that there's a little bit of like breaks when you move the cursor in a different direction. You can see like here, there's a little bit of a break where the line kind of starts and restarts, stops and restarts rather. And to get around that, you can either like continue the line a little bit more past the edge of the mouse cursor. You'd have to use trigonometry and directions and angles and all that fun stuff. You could also just draw a circle, like draw yourself a little circle at the corner, and that would sort of fill in the gap. And that looks really weird. That's because the radius is 10 and the width is only 5, so I'm going to make the radius 5 instead of 10. That's better. You can still see a little bit of an odd bulge there, but you get the idea. That's up to you if you even want to deal with that. I'm going to go back to putting this to a 4, because I think it looks better. I think 10 is a little bit too thick. Some other things to be aware about surfaces. When you minimize the game, I don't know why I just went and closed out of it, but when you minimize the game, it's going to be deleted, because surfaces are only stored in video memory, and when you close the game, when you minimize the game window rather, and you give attention to some other processes on your computer, that video memory is going to be temporarily evaporated, and when you try and come back to it, this won't exist anymore. So what you're going to want to do is either tell the user not to minimize the window, or you can say if surface exists, surface, and that's going to check to see if a surface with a given index stored in this variable exists. You can say draw the surface, and if it doesn't exist anymore, you can say just surface equals surface create. Get there eventually with the spelling. Just recreate it. So now, when you start the game, when you draw a little bit on the screen, you can draw some nice squiggles there when you minimize the game, and when you bring it back up, it's not going to crash. The surface isn't going to be there anymore, unfortunately. It's going to have reset itself, but it's not going to crash the game either, which is what you want. There are a few ways you can save surfaces when you minimize the window. If I were to open up surface underscore code help please, thank you. There's a couple other functions you can use here. You can come down here, you can save it to a file when you minimize the window. If you want it to come back when you reopen the window, you can save it to a file and load it back as a sprite or a background, and you can draw the sprite to the surface, and you can have effectively what you just had before. I believe, is there also a way to create a sprite from a surface? Yeah, there's a function that you can use to create a sprite from a surface. Right down over here, and you can do that as well, and then when you reset the surface, you can just draw the sprite to it. I think it works for backgrounds as well. Anyway, getting back to over here, there's a few other things you can use. There's a few other lines of code you can use on this. If you're done with the surface and you want to get rid of it out of video memory and free it up for something else in your game, you can say surface free, and that's essentially instance destroy for surfaces. It's also get height, get texture, get width, get pixel. That's going to get the color of the pixel at the particular position in the surface. Reset target, I talked about that. Resize. Say you create a surface and then for whatever reason you decide you don't like the size of the surface. You need it to change for whatever reason, you can say reset size. Save part. That's something that I vaguely mentioned earlier. You can save it to a file. Set target extended. Once again, I mentioned that already. Setting the target to different surfaces if you have more than one of them. Try to avoid using getPixel and getPixelExtended because those functions tend to be rather slow to execute because it's getting a particular color at a particular position. So try to avoid that. Aside from that, I can't think of a whole lot else that there is for me to talk about surfaces. Something that I guess I could think about, if you were to create this the wrong size, say room half the height and half the width of the room, and you try to draw on it, then if you go outside of it, like if you try and draw something down here in this corner, in this quadrant where the mouse is, nothing's going to happen. It's not going to crash or anything, but just nothing's going to happen. So that's something to be aware of. If you ever have a problem with something not getting drawn on a surface, that might be it. Also, I kind of learned this the hard way, but if you're working with 3D, surfaces don't really work that well in 3D. If you want to use surfaces in 3D, you have to turn the 3D drawing off first with like D3D end like that, right before you start drawing to the surface, and then you can restart it when you're done. I'm pretty sure I'm one of the only nutcases who's going to do that though, so don't worry too much about that. Anyway, that's how surfaces work. They're rather obscure. There are not too many uses for it, but they are fun to use. You'll have to use a draw on the screen or whatever. And that is all I have to say here. I hope you all enjoyed that. Rate, comment, and subscribe. Watch some of the stuff I have uploaded. And go make yourself the next Photoshop now. Have fun. Yeah, I will see you all later.